was saying, Kashmir Shaivism is becoming a popular name in the West and a resurgence across the globe. So how did you became interested in Kashmir Shaivism?
Well, from a very early time of my relationship with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, it was apparent that he had met Swami Lakshman Joo on 3 occasions. 1966, I think, was the first time. Then again in 68 and 69. And Maharishi placed a lot of interest in 2 texts. One was called the Vijñāna Bhairava Tantra, which listed 112 different ways to meditate and to transcend and to realize your own inner nature. And the second text was called the Shiva Sutras. And the Shiva Sutras were very, very mystical teachings that were found by a sage more than 1,200 years ago, engraved on a stone, on a huge rock. The rock was actually as big as a house. And this sage had been directed by Lord Shiva himself in a dream or in a very deep meditative state to go and find this rock, read these sutras, and propagate this teaching to the rest of the world, or to all, as much as he could. And the sage's name was Vasugupta. He did that. So I'd been reading these Shiva Sutras since 1974, and various translations. Eventually I came across a translation by Jayadeva Singh, a well-known writer in India on Indology. And he mentioned in that book that whatever I know about this subject, I've gleaned from Swami Lakshman Joo. And that was the first influence that I heard this name. It planted a seed in my mind, and I loved reading the Shiva Sutras for the next 8 years. Then it became inevitable that I should go to Kashmir and meet the person who has translated these verses. So that was my introduction to Kashmir Shaivism, what led me to go to Kashmir. And the moment I sat in the presence of Swami Lakshman Joo, I felt a very strong underlying feeling that here was a master who not only taught theoretically, but lived the experience of everything that he talked about. So when I met John and Denise, they'd already recorded about 600-700 hours of lectures. And over a period of time, John published 3 books. The first one was called Secret Supreme, which was the essential teachings that he got from Swami Lakshman Joo when he first went in 72. The second one was the Shiva Sutras. And the third book, which was published in 2000, that was 2002. The second book was called Self-Realization in Kashmir Shaivism, based on some lectures that Swamiji had given. And each of these, John edited the audio files and put them out. Then we came to the realization in a small group that there is something in this, not only just the words of an enlightened master, but the actual teachings come through in the sound of the voice. And it was from 2002 onwards that the decision was made, rather than publish edited books, why don't we release the original audios so that a person listening to the teachings of Kashmir Shaivism get it directly from Swami Lakshman Joo's own teachings. And this was a revelation for a lot of people. It also saved us the thing of, if we make a mistake in editing, that mistake is there, it's etched in stone. That book is out there. But there may be people out there, and this has been our experience, that are much more elevated than us, who hear just one thing that Swamiji said and go really deep into what it actually means on many different levels. We often get emails that said, I was listening to this tape and my gosh, it went through me, and something opened up to where I realized the great truth or reality about my own level of being and my own inner experience. And we're thankful. We say, that's fantastic. That's what Swamiji said would happen. That's what Swami Lakshman Joo said would happen even after he left this world. He said this this tradition will continue through the work that John and Denise did for some 16 years of meticulous recording all of the lectures. And remember, Swami Lakshman Joo didn't sit down and just talk verbatim as we're talking now, or, just impromptu. He only taught from the ancient texts that were discussions. They were called the tantric texts, which are the discussions between Shiva and Shakti. One exception was that he taught a book called the Tantraloka, which was basically given out by this great Shaiva master, Abhinavagupta, some, 1,000 years ago or more, who brought together through his own universal direct experience of enlightenment, brought together the essence of Shaivism and gave out a teaching based on the one core teaching which makes Kashmir Shaivism unique, which was called the Malini Vijñāna Tantra. So that has, for many people, made they don't have to travel to Kashmir to sit there for years and years in the cold winters and been very pleasant in summer, but very stark winters. They don't have to do. They can actually hear all the original recordings, and that's what an oral tradition is. An oral tradition is not. It's not just what's being said; it's how it's being said, who's saying it, and the level of consciousness that person is coming from in what they're saying. In the first book that John Hughes published called Secret Supreme, there was a chapter on grace, and it mentioned that there are 9 different levels of grace. And that was distilled down from one of the chapters in the book that I mentioned, Abhinavagupta, this very illustrious master who 1,000 years ago took all this text and consolidated it into one teaching, and then consolidated that again into a smaller text. He devoted part of chapter 13, it is, on the 27 levels of grace. So the 9 levels of grace come down that there are 3 levels within each of those 9 levels. So you get 3 9s of 27. And he clearly depicted what is the experience of each individual when they experience eight various type of grace. One grace might just be somebody finds a book and they read a book on spirituality, or somebody finds a book on Christianity, and they read the book and they become incredibly devoted to Jesus. That's an internal grace that comes, through, let's say, the Holy Spirit, or through our own inner being, where we wake up. It's like a wake-up call in the world of, I've been dreaming.
In Kashmir Shaivism, as you were mentioning, there are these beautiful texts, classical texts of saints who were amazing jnana yogis. Bhattanarayana, a book called Stava Chintamani, The Magical Jewel of Devotion, or Shiva Sutras, the hymns to Lord Shiva. And they were just extreme poetry. And even in Advaita Vedanta, a sage like Ramana Maharishi, who was considered like the apostle of that tradition, wrote very beautiful poetry towards modern Machala. And then if you look at other traditions like Sufism, we have Hafiz and Rumi writing poetry that even people who are not spiritual are moved by. So I was wondering if someone who is that elevated, who, let's say, is already enlightened, is this something that's a natural pouring out of them, right? So is there more to just the sadhaka being devoted, but somebody who has already realized it's also devotional to some extent? Maybe not everybody. Would you think that this is a natural outcome of the path?
Have you ever watched children when they're really happy?
I think so.
They dance and they sing, and they don't know why. It just feels like they can't contain the bliss and the joy of what they're doing, especially when 2 children play together and they're just so, they dance. or they chase one another and they scream, or it's a very natural outpouring of the inability to contain the bliss that is building up inside them. The same, saints are like children, they say. So these great masters who had this experience of the flow, of tasting this universal ocean of bliss, they had no other alternative other than to sing or to write poetry about it. It was the natural expression of that experience spilling over into poetry, into song, into dance, very big part of Indian culture, to express that divinity externally. And you get that in all cultures. It's not something that is unique just to India. That has been going on for, you look at any ancient culture or tradition, they all have their dance, they all have their music. It's really inherent within human nature to express yourself. And there is a state, one of the graces that we talked about, the second most intense grace, is in Sanskrit is called Tivra Madhya Shaktipada. Okay, so on the scale of 27 levels of grace, this is 26. When that grace descends on a yogi, on any individual, it can be spontaneous. That yogi exhibits 5 unique qualities. And those 5 qualities, the first one is an intense love of God, whoever their God is, an intense love and devotion towards God. And one of them is they experience a spontaneous ability to express themselves through poetry or song.
I feel like Kashmir Shaivism, or would you agree that Kashmir Shaivism provides us with tools that can enhance our perception for cosmic exploration?
Yeah, I will quote again Abhinava Gupta in this 8th chapter of the book that he wrote, Tantraloka. Tantraloka means Tantra Aloka. Aloka means to shed light on a particular system. The Tantra means a particular system of knowledge. So in that, he says that the earth element of the first of and grossest of the 36 elements is so vast that out of the 118 worlds that are contained within all the 36 elements, 16 of them exist just within our, earth element. And we're talking about a huge, amphitheater here, if we want to use it, a huge area of space where our solar system is just a very small part. And he points out that there are 16 levels within that, and that our known universe that we know, our solar system and all the planets, is number 6. So there are 5 below us, and there's 10 above. And on each of these levels, there are different levels of intelligent beings. And in Swamiji's Kashmiri rendering of this text, he even went on to describe some of the worlds that he visited in his practice, and saw, even describing some of the beings. Now, if someone wants to hear what the Bhagavad Gita is in terms of the translation made by Abhinava Gupta, that's a unique document. That's a very unique teaching. So that's the best way to find out about this. And, the website also mentions there have been now 11 books published, I think 12 by now, lost count, 12 books, and 7 of those, or, 9 of those are now the audio transcripts, and the audios come out free. If you buy the book, you get the transcript, and in the back page, there's an ability to download the audio for free. So you can read and listen along with what was given out to John of the East, during that period of 16 years. It's really a wonderful way to learn and hear it from the words of a master who's connected to this incredible 5,000-year-old oral tradition.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, definitely. We'll put the links both to the Saturday gathering and the bookstore and the Lakshman Joo Academy in the description below to this video. And yeah, thank you. I've been part of some of these gatherings, and I've read some of these books with you, and it's just incredible, the purity of the transmission and the level, the quality of the work.